Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And over the course of several videos, I have had the great honor and privilege and pleasure to have been able to discuss the films and other aspects with regard to this set, which I have right here in front of me, which was released earlier this year by the Criterion Collection, and it is known as the RANOWN Westerns, 5 films directed by Bud Boetticher, starring Randolph Scott. And those films are The Tall T, Decision at Sundown, Buchanan Rides Alone, Ride Lonesome, and Comanche Station. And so this has been released earlier this year by Criterion, courtesy of this set, which is a 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo format. So we have 4K UHD discs, and then we also have Blu-ray discs. And so it's been my great honor to be able to speak about these. This has been a wonderful opportunity to revisit these films and to get involved with them yet again. There's so much that these films, I think, have to offer, and I think part of the great thing about this Criterion release is that it provides a wonderful entry point into that world once again. To revisit, or for those who might be visiting these films for the first time, to indeed visit for the first time. So it's been my great honor to be able to do that. What I'd like to propose to do now, my dear friends, is to speak about other points of this set. There is a third Blu-ray disc, which is what I have in the player right now, Blu-ray disc number 3. And indeed, this Blu-ray disc number 3 is devoted to a whole list of supplements. As we have been chronicling over the course of these discussions, the films or the other discs, the Blu-ray discs in fact, include a number of supplements, and also some of the films do have the option of an audio commentary track. Not all, but some of them do. But in addition to those supplements, which we have already discussed, there is this separate Blu-ray disc number 3. So we have supplements here. So why don't we first begin our discussion by speaking very briefly about what we have in terms of the supplements that we can find here. Again, I have Blu-ray disc number 3 already put into the machine, and we can go from there. So the first supplement I want to draw your attention to, again, on this Blu-ray disc number 3, and please pardon me for the poor presentation. It's very difficult to read. I understand that. I apologize for that, but let me read it out here for you. The first is Bud Boetticher, A Man Can Do That. And it's described here as follows. This 2005 documentary, which spans the life and career of director Bud Boetticher, features interviews with filmmakers Peter Bogdanovich, Quentin Tarantino, Clint Eastwood, and others. So this is indeed a very wonderfully long, feature-length documentary. It is, by my count, approximately 1 hour and 24 minutes, again from the year 2005. This is a really fabulous documentary, and it is a wonderful chronicle and overview and a type of legacy perspective on the life and times of Bud Boetticher, and from a number of filmmakers and artists and critics who are very much into his works and who know his works thoroughly. I should also add Taylor Hackford, for example, who has appeared elsewhere in the set, also is featured here, as well as other points of, say, biographical detail. There's some discussion about the background and childhood of Bud Boetticher, growing up in the early part of the 20th century, and already almost immediately there are points in his life that bring us to his love of, say, horses and nature from his perspective. Also, some aspects of his family life early on during his childhood period are also brought up, as well as some aspects regarding his life in academics and sports in school, a particular injury that may have changed his life in a certain way, and through other details of his growing up and studies. And we find also that he is drawn towards the arts, and that leads to his career in terms of movie making and cinema and the like. And so this is essentially a wonderful introduction into the world of Bud Boetticher, for those who, again, are new to the world of Bud Bedecker. And indeed, it chronicles and points to a lot of the key moments of Bud Bedecker's life and career. And we should point to, in addition to the films, for instance, that are considered the RANOWN Westerns, and they are touched upon in this documentary, that's for sure, but other points of very, very worthy note are, for example, The Bullfighter and the Lady, and 7 Men from Now, as well as other films, as well as the RANOWN Westerns. So, and then from the perspective of Bud Bedecker, as well as filmmakers and artists who really respect and admire and really know his work quite thoroughly. So, and there's some great anecdotal details about how he maneuvered his way, Bud Bedecker maneuvered his way through the film industry, his work with, for example, John Wayne, his encounter with John Ford, as an example in the context of The Bullfighter and the Lady, his entry into his furtherances into the Western genre that would eventually lead to, for instance, his encounter and meeting with people like Burt Kennedy and Randolph Scott and others. So, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, the 2005 documentary. I mean, it's not the first time it's been made available, but I'm very happy to see that the Criterion Collection is making available here for the purposes of their release. So that's the first thing that's up, which is the 2005 documentary. It's a really great one. And excuse me here. Now, let me pick up my remote control and move to the next supplement here, which is called Cinéma de Notre Temps, directed by Claude Ventura and written by Philippe Garnier. Director Bud Bedecker is interviewed about his career in Hollywood. It originally aired on September 13th, 1995. So here we have another great insight and interview with Bud Bedecker himself. I should point out that this and other supplements here, what's so great about this overall is that we do get a lot of focus on Bud Bedecker's life and times and career, oftentimes from Bud Bedecker himself. So that's, I think, a really great benefit to these supplements. And in many ways, one can say that they are quite Bud Bedecker focused, which is, I think, a very strong point of this. But here we have another great interview, and again, keen insights and focus on what one might call sort of the perspective, a real sort of what one might call, there's a sort of rugged sense to the certain sensibilities that are espoused, as well as a type of down-to-earth quality, as well as a very, I think, refreshing sense of a type of individual spirit that is expressed here, as well as other points that are reflected here that also are mirroring what has been spoken about so far, for instance, in the previous documentary. So this is really great. So this is another supplement, the second on this disc, which is the Cinéma de Notre Temps episode. It's Bedecker Rides Again. This is approximately 59 minutes, so just shy of an hour. So it's another great, long, and robust one. Next one is Bud Bedecker, A Study in Self-Determination. And this is described here as follows. In this 1971 documentary, filmmaker Taylor Hackford interviews director Bud Bedecker about his experiences as a bullfighter in Mexico. So one of the aspects of Bud Bedecker's life and career and his maybe perspective on the world and his philosophy is his time and experiences in Mexico, and how that affected both his, say, personal life as well as his professional life, as well as his perspective on bullfighting. Now, this is reflected in a number of films, specifically, or for example, and perhaps most famously, The Bullfighter and the Lady. And here we have Taylor Hackford and Bud Bedecker speaking about certain aspects of bullfighting from Bud Bedecker's point of view and his history, how he got introduced to this, and what were the circumstances that led him to where he is now in 1971 when this documentary is made. This is approximately 1 hour. So, I understand very much so maybe the art or the artist and the artist craft of Bud Bedecker is, I think, for some very entertaining, but maybe for others this might be somewhat off-putting. And indeed, there's an interesting moment. There are some very interesting moments in this discussion where Bud Bedecker does express or does acknowledge there's a type of maybe innate sense of maybe disgust or a sense of cruelty that's associated with with bullfighting overall. And he does acknowledge that, which I think is an interesting point. He also, I think, he makes his case as well as in terms of how he approaches bullfighting, what it is he looks to when he is engaged with it, and the forms that are involved, the sort of physical forms that are also involved, which are also showcased here by in his discussion with Taylor Hackford. So again, I know that perhaps Bud Bedeker's works aren't for everybody, and indeed, I think some people have reached out to me privately and have expressed such opinions to me, which is, I think, a very reasonable thing to have. That's not a problem at all. But I think for those who are wanting to get an insight into Bud Bedeker's life and times, I think this is one area which is acknowledged to be a very significant one. And it also leads into how he approaches cinema to a certain degree, as well as how his career was affected in terms of his life and times in Mexico, as it were. So in those ways and others, I think this is a very valuable and very useful place to go. And again, it's another insight into the life and times of Bud Bedeker from Taylor Hackford, who himself is a self-acknowledged fan and admirer and expert indeed into the world of Bud Bedeker, as you've seen in some of Taylor Hackford's other contributions as shown in the set. So it's great to see this, I think, or great to have this available. So this is approximately 1 hour, again, for those who are interested. And then next we have Visiting Bud Bedeker. And this is described as being, in this 1999 interview, director Bud Bedeker shares stories about his collaborations with actor Randolph Scott and screenwriter Burt Kennedy. And this is approximately 37 minutes. And here we are getting, again, not that we didn't get it in previous supplements, but here perhaps it can be said we are getting something of more focus on the meetings and encountering with, say, Randolph Scott and Burt Kennedy, who are key figures in what is known as the RANOWN Western cycle. So it's great to have this. Supplement here again from Bedeker's perspective, and it's great to see where he is and the sort of the state of, say, peace or bliss, one might say, that one can feel when one hears his comments as he is being interviewed here and talking about his life and times, especially around this period of the RANOWN Western cycle. And his feelings about Burt Kennedy, his feelings about Randolph Scott. There is so much respect, and there's a type of say, a way in which Randolph Scott is expressing his perspective, which I think could be described as having its roots in a sense of perspective, or roots in a sense of the rugged dimensions of the Western genre, as well as trying to depict human emotions and dialogue in a sharp, crisp way, as well as his great admiration for these figures that, again, form a really key component of what is known as the RANOWN Western. So here's another great set of, say, interviews or discussions, approximately 37 minutes. And then we have, it doesn't end there, my friends, because then we have Bud Bedeker and Jim Kitsis. And it says here, in this audio interview from 1969, film scholar Jim Kitsis talks to director Bud Bedeker about the series of westerns he made with actor Randolph Scott. So here we have more insight, again, in this audio interview set, which is approximately 1 hour and 2 minutes. So here we have another long, robust, brilliant interview, again, from Bud Bedeker himself about his perspective on the RANOWN Western, specifically about working with Randolph Scott, and because, of course, his career with Randolph Scott does span a number of films beyond the RANOWN Westerns that are included with this Criterion set. So this is also, I think, very all-encompassing in that regard. Really, really well done, again, from 1969. And then that's not all, because then this Blu-ray Disc 3 ends with a great discussion with Farron Smith-Nemi on Randolph Scott. Film critics Farron Smith-Nemi presents a profile of actor Randolph Scott with a focus on the westerns he made with director Bud Bedeker. So up to now, one can say that we have had a focus on, say, Bud Bedeker, maybe primarily or centrally, but now we have a discussion from Farron Smith-Nemi about Randolph Scott directly, and so this is great. Not to say that Randolph Scott wasn't mentioned at all in any other supplements. On the contrary, he was mentioned, I think, quite prominently. But here we have a Randolph Scott-focused supplement from Farron Smith Nemi, approximately 25 minutes. This is really great. I mean, Randolph Scott, I think, is, I mean, obviously, very legendary actor, but Farron Smith Nemi maybe acknowledges that perhaps to today's generations, people might be discovering Randolph Scott for the first time, and if so, there's so much richness and warmth and history and such a fascinating character Randolph Scott is in terms of his life and background, even when he was a very, very prominent actor. There are aspects of his biography that are utterly fascinating, which are also echoed by Bud Boetticher when Bud Boetticher is on camera or being interviewed or recording, talking about Randolph Scott. This is a fascinating introduction point into the world of Randolph Scott, some key moments in his filmography as this leading man, or as he gained this great momentum and his reputation that led into so beautifully the work he did with Bud Boetticher. So it's nice to see this Randolph Scott-centric supplement here from Farron Smith Nemi, who's a great expert. Wonderful, wonderful discussion here. So that is the extent, or that concludes what can be found in terms of the supplements here on the Criterion Blu-ray Disc 3 that's part of the RANOWN Westerns Criterion release. So I should point out that, yes, we do get primarily, or perhaps in the majority, we get Bud Boetticher focused supplements, which I think are great. They do touch upon many aspects of his career other than the RANOWN Westerns, but they do touch upon the RANOWN Westerns. And so this is, of course, not the entirety of every supplement that has been created in the context of Bud Boetticher, in the context of the RANOWN Westerns. There have been other non-Criterion supplements, of course, over the years that I think have addressed this topic with a number of other supplements, which some overlap with this Criterion release, others do not. So, but if you are looking for a great, say, entry point into the world of Bud Boetticher, and if you're looking to learn more about Bud Boetticher, I mean, these places are really great places to go. And they, when I watch these, I'm so much yearning for watching Bud Boetticher's films. So I think if that's the point of watching these, I think it has satisfied, it has achieved that goal, I think, in a really great way, at least from my perspective. So this is what can be found in terms of Blu-ray Disc 3. That's part of the Criterion release of the RANOWN Westerns. Next up, I want to focus on the packaging, or this box set design, the presentation of the packaging here from Criterion. So this is the again, pardon me for my poor presentation skills. I hope you can forgive me. But this is the Digipack design, meaning that there is this cardboard exterior shell, which looks like this, and then there's the spine, and then there's the back here, and the spine indicates spine number 1186. And just note here, the top has the titles, and then the bottom here is looks like so. But then this is the outer shell, and the outer shell reveals inside what can be said to be the inner shell. And the inner shell looks like this, and we have, again, more pictures adorning the inner compartment, the disc compartment, and this is a type of casing that is folding out like so. And please pardon me here for this, but as you can see, it has 6 discs, but the say the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 discs, and the 4K UHD discs plus the Blu-ray discs. And you can see that one disc is not there, and that reason is because that third Blu-ray disc is in fact what's in the machine at the moment as I'm speaking. So that's how the layout is, and indeed you can see that the layout is such that you have the Blu-ray discs with a type of grayish blue font, whereas the 4K UHD discs have this a grayish green font, which I like. I like the use of the colors here, the blues and the greens and the reds as well. The red motif being part of, say, the outer shell here, but the blue motif and the green motif, the blue motif being part of the inner shell, with the green motif also carrying over into the 4K UHD disc. So I think that's very interesting. I like this setup very much. I like the fact that it has this box set design and the way that the discs are set up and stacked, I think there's no touching of the discs physically speaking, as far as I can tell, which is really nice. I do like this this digipack design. Again, I should point out that it is collectively given the spine number 1186. To my understanding, the films themselves do not have their own individual spine number. I'm a fan of individual spine numbers for the individual titles as well as the comprehensive spine number as well. They used to do that before Criterion, when maybe in the earlier spine numbers and the like, but I wish they could bring that back one day. But again, that's a very minor point from my perspective. Still, it's nice to have this set again at spine number 1186. Please let me point out too, as you can see, the artwork, the design here is really fascinating. I like the way in which the font is used, as well as the use of the image of Randolph Scott in many stances and many poses as well, and the way that it's repeated, perhaps here in this way to suggest the number of films that are represented, the feature films anyway. And so I should point out here the art directors: Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman; designer F. Ron Miller; art production coordinator William Breeze; art assistant Julie Sussman. So this is, I think, a very nice design. I'm very, very pleased with it. And also let me point out too that within this compartment also is room for the booklet. Now, I have taken the liberty prior to the start of this video of removing the booklet. So let me now just show you very quickly the instance of the booklet, which is right here. This is the staple booklet. This is the front of the booklet, and this is the back of the booklet. So you have, again, a reminder of the titles are, and another image of Randolph Scott here, and this time a type of green motif. So we have the red the red outer shell. I was holding it upside down, I apologize. The red outer shell here, followed by the sort of bluish tint of the inner compartment, followed by what could be said to be a greenish tint in the booklet. So I like that progression, as well as the greenish tint, as I said, that can be found on the 4K UHD discs themselves, physically speaking. The bluish tint continuing on for the Blu-ray discs, of course. But I love the staple booklet here. I think it's wonderful. It's on this paper, which is has a type of a quality feel to it. It's not quote-unquote cheap feeling paper. It does have a certain, say, texture to it, which I really find quite pleasant to the touch. And we've spoken a little bit about what can be found in the early parts of this in terms of write-ups on each of the films that can be found here. So, but let me now take a moment to speak about the two writings that are found here. First, by Tom Gunning, "Some Things a Man Can't Ride Around, Bud Bedeker's RANOWN Westerns." And that the essay begins here. And this is a wonderful write-up, again, a wonderful overview, a wonderful take or assembly of takes on the spanning the various films, primarily focusing on the RANOWN Westerns that we find for this set, but also touching on a number of others. Again, putting a great perspective on the life and times and career and filmography and cinema philosophy, if you will, of Bud Bedeker and company in the context of the RANOWN Westerns. So well done. This is a great essay, Tom Gunning's essay. Strong recommendation is to watch the films first, and then you can watch the essays here. In fact, I should point out, too, I forgot to mention in the supplements as well, for the other supplements that are found here, my strong suggestion is to watch the films first, and then you can watch the supplements here, and then you can read the essays here, and because there are a number of details that are given away, especially about the endings of some of the films, so just keep that in mind. In case you are interested in the supplements and the essay. That's the Tom Gunning essay, but there's one more essay here called by Glenn Kenny called "The Outlaw Variations, the RANOWN Westerns Finely Drawn Antagonists," and it begins here on page 26 of the booklet. The way in which the quote-unquote villains are portrayed in these films, I think, is one of the fascinating story and character arc points that are very ripe and rich for discussion whenever one speaks of the RANOWN Westerns, because it's been brought up, I think, very much so, and for good reason too, which is that the quote-unquote villains are portrayed in a way that has a sense of maybe to a certain degree sympathy, or there's a degree of understandability, I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but there's a way in which there is a nuance to their performances and characterizations that allow for a lot of ambiguity, moral ambiguity that seep into a discussion of how our quote-unquote protagonist or hero, the Randolph Scott character, how those characters enter into the fray of this morally ambiguous world. And so this essay is another great reminder of these characterizations. This is a great essay by Glenn Kenny, so please check this out if you can. Once again, my strong suggestion is to watch the films first, and then one can dive into the Glenn Kenny essay and the supplements, and also the Gunning essay as well. Well done, Criterion, for this. I'm a big fan of the booklet type. I like this paper quality. Again, I understand that this is a collector's set, so it's always maybe Criterion would. The chances, I think, were very high, of course, to begin with, that Criterion would have a collector's set staple booklet. But even though my expectations were in that direction already, it's still nice to see it actually come to fruition in this manner. So that is the state of the RANOWN Western set as I have it here for purposes of the discussion here, and for purposes of my my discussion throughout these various videos on the RANOWN Westerns here. 5 films directed by Bud Boetticher, starring Randolph Scott. Of course, would have been nice to have seen other films. Of course, we know that there are a number of other films directed by Bud Boetticher, and indeed featuring Randolph Scott, that aren't in this collection. And so would it have been nice to have seen other films of this sort directed by Bud Boetticher included in this? Of course it would have been. Of course it would have been great to see more films. Other than these 5 films, which again, as standalone films, they are really brilliant. But I know for some people, maybe there are other non-Criterion releases that include the RANOWN Westerns here, and so maybe it would have been nice to have Criterion with this set try to distinguish itself even further from these other previous non-Criterion releases by, say, including other films other than the 5 films that we have here in this collection. If you feel that way, I totally understand. And indeed, when you watch some of the supplements in particular, you're reminded of some of the other great standout moments in the career of Bud Boetticher, and one becomes so curious and desirous to watch these other films. So I understand the sentiment exactly. So it would have been nice, of course, to have other films in the set, that's for sure. But what we do get in terms of this cycle of films, the RANOWN Westerns, is a brilliant display, I think, and so thrilling, so entertaining for the reasons I've tried to explain throughout the course of these videos. So this is a wonderful place for those who are maybe curious about these films but have not yet entered into this world. I think this is a great entry point for you, as well as a great entry point into the world of Bud Boetticher if you are interested. And then for those who have these films in previous releases, of course, it's up to you if you want to get this set or not. It does feature a number of supplements that do overlap, but there are some, some ways in which this set stands out. The Fran Smith-Nemi discussion, for example, on Randolph Scott. Also, the inclusion of the 4K presentations, the 4K UHD discs. And so that, I think, for those, again, I've tried to express a little bit about how I feel about the 4K discs with regard to each of the films over the course of the videos. So if you're interested, you can check out those videos separately. But I think overall, as an experience, that is something to keep in mind. And indeed, there's a way that these films, I think overall, generally speaking, do have a richness and palette that I think is well preserved in the 4K format. So that is something to consider. But again, if you are satisfied with what you have before, indicator releases or other Bud Boetticher film releases from past non-Criterion releases, I think that's fine. At the end of the day, it's always about celebrating or re-celebrating the great legacy of these filmmakers in films such as the RANOWN Westerns. But if you are interested in the Criterion release, my dear friends, here you go. So that is maybe a good place, I think, to conclude my thoughts on this really robust set from Criterion earlier this year, the RANOWN Westerns, 5 films directed by Bud Boetticher, starring Randolph Scott. So, my dear friends, thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you very much for putting up with all these videos. I'm very flattered and humbled, and I'm also very apologetic. I don't mean to try your patience any further. So But thank you very much for always being there and always being supportive and with constructive feedback and comments of friendship and the like. I very much appreciate it, and I look forward to our continuing conversations going forward about these films and the films beyond. So, but until the next video, my dear friends, please continue to be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including the RANOWN Westerns films, including the films of Randall Scott, Bud Bedecker, and beyond. And so until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.